All right, all praise going on. It's most certainly due to the Most High God, the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Peace to you in the name of Jesus. I count on truly blessing each and every single time that I can come before you, preach the word of God, and never do it kind of as a light thing. So I want to just deal very briefly with a question that Winter Woods had, and the question was, what did Job do wrong? I mean, he suffered such pain and anguish in his life, and the question was, what did he do? Well, the answer is he didn't do anything. It wasn't about him doing anything wrong. Rather, it was simply um, something that the Lord allowed to happen. And that's one thing that people oftentimes misconstrue. They believe that because you're a servant of God and that you're righteous, that bad things don't happen. And the bad thing doesn't necessarily have to do anything with you. Just like you can be a wicked individual and have a peaceful life. I mean, have the things that you need in life. Let's put it like that. I want to read the description of Job. See, it wasn't that Job did anything. Peace to you, Brother Marcus. It says in Job 1:1, there was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. Okay, and so that's how he's described. And then when we go further into this chapter, it says in verse 6, now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking up and down in it. Because he's right here on this earth, wreaking havoc. Has been since the days of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And understand also that opened up the door for the despair, for the destruction, and ultimately the death of man that you see today. But nevertheless, he said, and the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? It doesn't sound like Job did anything if the Lord is describing him in this manner. Okay, so it wasn't that Job did anything, but it's just that's life. Okay, again, when man sinned, that opened up the door for the things that we experience, the pain, the anguish, the sickness, and ultimately the death that we face as a species. Let's go to stay in Job and let's see something Job said. And if you looked at life and examined it just a little bit, if you lived a little bit, you understand this to be true. This is Job, the 14th chapter, in verse 1. He said, man that is born of a woman is a few days and full of trouble. So that's the human condition. You're gonna have some, I like to describe it as, in your life you have trouble, crises, trouble, crises. That's life. And then you go to your long home, which is the grave. Let's go to Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter. Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter, because Solomon said a similar thing in regard to what happens to man. It's not like, again, that Job did anything wrong. As a matter of fact, let's read Ecclesiastes, then we'll go back to Job. Ecclesiastes, the 9th chapter, and I'm going to read one verse here. It says, I returned and saw, I'm in Ecclesiastes 9 and 11. It says, I returned and saw under the sun that the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, neither yet bread to the wise, nor yet riches to men of understanding, nor yet favor to men of skill, but time and chance happeneth to them all. See, certain things just happen. It has nothing to do with you being righteous or unrighteous. Certain things just happen. But now let's go back to Job, because one thing about it is that we should understand, because Job, that question was, what did he do wrong? And one thing he did, though, he did want to justify himself in the eyes of his friends that came against him. Peace to everybody that's listening. He wanted to do that, and he wanted to be vindicated in their eyes, because they said shit. They basically came at him like, surely you've done something wrong for all this turmoil to come upon you like this. But it just wasn't. It's just that the Lord allowed it to happen. And even in all that happened, Job was still righteous. But now, one thing that the Lord, the Lord did say as he kept talking, Job about wanting to be vindicated in Job 38:1, he asked a question. It says, then in verse 1, it says, then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Girl, so who are you? See, one thing about it, people act, somebody will die. I've seen that in my own life. I mean, somebody real close to me dying, and then somebody else also close, very extremely close to me, saying they were upset with God. I was a child, and I knew that wasn't right, because I knew then. I didn't know God, but I knew that God was all powerful. From my concept in my head of what God was and who God was, I looked at him somebody who can control things. And if he allowed it to happen, what you mad for at him? That's not gonna do you any good. He's sovereign. So that's why he said, who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up thy loins like a man. For I would demand of thee, answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding. And he gave this long I don't want to call it a diatribe, but he asked him all these questions to humble him, like, man, you're not in a position to question me. And it goes on and on and on. Like we're not in a position to question what God has done or what he allows to take place. And Job eventually acknowledged that in chapter 42 of verse 1. It said, then Job answered the Lord and said, I know that thou canst do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that had a counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not. Things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. Here I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me, I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear. But now mine eye see thee, wherefore I abhor myself and repent in dust and ashes. And so, it wasn't like Job had done anything. And as a matter of fact, Job was restored. Okay, so the Lord allowed him to have more than he had. In verse 12, after he prayed for his friends, it says, so the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than the beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep and 6,000 camels and 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 she asses. And he had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. Okay, so that's something about Job. Job didn't do anything wrong, but things can happen in your life that they just happen. Let's see another example of this. And it can be, life can be, when I say it just happened, sometimes it can, even a bad thing that happens to you, like in the case of Job, can be from the Lord, but ultimately it can end up being good. See, life is like that. It's not just black and white. There are a lot of things that can happen. You think about how people just die. We'll get to that in a second. But Genesis, the 50th chapter, in verse 20. Here we see, this is after, Joseph, who was righteous, his brothers were jealous, and they sold him into slavery. Now, that's a terrible thing. Now, while in slavery, he got falsely accused of attempted rape and was thrown in prison. But while in prison, he interpreted dreams of a baker and a butler, and eventually he was brought before Pharaoh, interpreted his dreams, and was given a governorship and a rulership that was second only to Pharaoh. See, sometimes a bad thing can happen and turn good, but but understand, he wasn't committing iniquity. That's another thing. Sometimes you hear people, we were in a prison ministry. I can remember brothers talking about, the Lord sent me here because no, you actually did the stuff that you went to court for and received this time for. You did that. But see, sometimes it could be just you not doing anything. It's like people get shot at a stray bullet. But in certain cases, something bad can happen. You look, oh, this is terrible, but you try your best, but in actuality, it could turn out to be good. And this is what he said here. Genesis 50 and verse 20 says, but as for you, ye thought, talking to his brothers, He said, "You thought evil against me, but God meant it unto good to bring to pass as it is this day to save much people alive." Had he not suffered that, he would he Israel would not have. He's saying that, hey, the famine would have been hard to survive. Even if you've ever had struggle in your life, sometimes that struggle in your life can prepare you for something better and greater. That if you didn't struggle with, you wouldn't know how to appreciate, you wouldn't even be able to get through the situation. So life is complex like that. This is the last place, Isaiah the 57th chapter. See, even when people die, you can say, oh, he died. You must have done something wrong. Well, death comes to all. But now let's look at this. Even in death, this is Isaiah 57:1. It said, the righteous perishing, and no man layeth it to heart. And merciful men are taken away, none considering that the righteous is taken away from the evil to come. So, a person died, but even in death, they're not suffering. See, we have a mindset that, again, if something bad happens to you, then you must have done something wrong. Not necessarily. That is the human condition, that you will have bad things happen, as whether you serving the Lord or not. And with that, brothers and sisters, I want to remind you that we're at the Household of Faith, meet every Sabbath at 5925 West 25th Avenue in Gary, Indiana, at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. We live stream right here on the Israel Teach YouTube channel, as well as at www.israelteach.org. If you've been edified by the ministry and would like to leave a donation, you can do so on our website, www.israelteach.org. 100% of the proceeds go to the work of the ministry. We also have Bible study every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time on Zoom. And the personal meeting ID number for that Bible study is 845-710-8849. Again, that number is 845-710-8849. We also have a Friday night Bible study at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, and that personal meeting ID number is 602-961-1318. That's a question and answer where you can ask any question that you have according that is Bible-based. And with that, brothers and sisters, I also want to remind you of books that I've written that are available. Into Egypt Again with Ships, Killing Black Innocents, The Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays, Hair Like Wool, Feet Like Burned Brass, For Then Shall Be Great Tribulation, and In Defense of Biblical Polygyny. All these books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and other places where books are sold. And with that, brothers and sisters, so is my prayer that you were edified.